This is my testimony to faith. I was born to a Pakistani Muslim family in 1971, and I grew up in England in a very strict Pakistani family. We were nominal Muslims. I was never forced to practice Islam, but I did have to go to mosque after school and learn how to read Arabic. I always knew at home from my mum and dad that there was a God and his name was Allah. I was never forced to cover my hair or pray 5 times a day or fast, but I was expected to wear modest clothing and be chaste. So I always knew that there was a God, but I didn't practice. I knew there was a God, but I didn't practice any kind of religion. I just had what I was told by my parents and what I was being told at mosque. So I kind of knew that there was a God. I've always been very introverted and loved nature, loved animals, a bit of a deep thinker as well. So anyway, so this is my testimony of how I left my cultural religion, family background, Islam, and how I came to learn the truth of Christ and who God is and how it's changed my life. I do know that lots of Muslims have had supernatural experiences with Christ, and I'm one of them. It really needed for me to have a massive supernatural experience, several actually, for me to come to faith. So so I'll start at the beginning then. So I was a bit of a party girl back in Brighton when I was in my early 20s, and I was just partying, living a bit of a carefree lifestyle. And my parents decided that it would be a good idea for me to go with them to Mecca to do the pilgrimage, the Islamic pilgrimage. And I think I was about 23 years old. And my mum said to me, the first time you lay your eyes on the Kaaba, which is the black cube that all Muslims pray, bow down to, she said, when the first time you see the Kaaba, you'll have an experience with God. And we were driving from the airport to Mecca, and when I looked and I saw Kaaba for the first time, I heard a voice speak to me in my mind, in my head, and it was a loud voice and only I could hear it. And the voice said to me, I am Alpha, I am Omega, I'm the beginning, and I am the end, and said it over and over and over again. And nobody else in that taxi could hear, only I could hear. And I knew what Alpha meant, but I didn't know what Omega was. And I understood what the beginning and the end is. So I was aware that something very significant was happening. As I said, I knew what Alpha was. It's the first letter of the Greek alphabet, but I didn't know what Omega was. So I'm Alpha, I'm Omega, I'm the beginning, and I am the end. And I knew instinctively that I was being spoken to by a supernatural, a deity. I knew that I was having an experience, but I also was very, very aware that this was not in any way, shape or form Islamic. I knew that I wasn't being spoken to by Allah, because apparently Allah only understands Arabic and we have to pray in Arabic, and this was being spoken to me in my own language, in English. I also was very, very clear. It was very clear to me that this is not from any Islamic scriptures. But anyway, so that's what happened in Saudi Arabia when I was 23 years old. So I heard, I am Alpha, I am Omega, I'm the beginning and I am the end, over and over and over again. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it was significant. So my experience in Saudi Arabia during that pilgrimage was horrific. I didn't find any holy God there. I was terrified the whole time there. I was anxious. I didn't find any peace during that pilgrimage at all. Anyway, so so I came back to the UK and I continued leading my lifestyle. So let's fast forward to 10 years later, and I think it was about I was about 35 years old, maybe 33, 34, yeah, around about that age. And I again was leading a particularly hedonistic lifestyle, lots of partying and socialising, and at that time I had managed to get hold of a copy of the Quran in English, and I'd never read the Quran in English. I'd only ever read it in Arabic. I didn't understand what the Islamic scriptures contained. So getting hold of this Quran in English, and I read it. I read the Quran in English, and I was shocked. I was shocked because, number one, the whole thing was incoherent. It didn't read easily. It wasn't, how am I supposed to understand this? Anyway, it was incoherent. It was difficult to understand. But the content shocked me. And I just thought, is this from God? Is this really from God? And at that same time, so I'm reading the Quran in English for the first time, but at the same time, my mother, in passing, said to me, she mentioned to me that the Islamic prophet, her prophet, Muhammad, he'd married Aisha, his wife, when she was 6 years old. And I said to my mum, "You what? No one had ever told me this before." So she's telling me that Muhammad married Aisha when she was 6, and she was 6 years old, and she was still playing with dolls when Muhammad brought her home. So I've read the Quran in English, and it's definitely not from God. And then she's telling my mum's telling me about her prophet, who, in today's definition, that's a paedophile, isn't it? So I was shocked to the core. So what do you do? So I always knew that there was a God. I just didn't know who God was. So I cried out to God. I was in my bedroom and I cried out to God and I said, "Who are you? I need to know the truth. Please tell me, who are you? I need to know the truth." And a week later, I had a dream. And in that dream, I saw the end of the world. I saw like fire and brimstone coming from the sky, and I just saw destruction was happening. Anyway, to cut this long story short, that in that dream, the only words that I heard in that dream were of a man, and he was stood on a platform, and all destruction was happening, all the fire and brimstone was coming from the sky. And he said, "Brothers and sisters, this is the end. Please, please don't die without Jesus Christ in your life." Anyway, so a week before, I'm asking God, tell me the truth. Who are you? And then a week later, I get this dream telling me, don't die without Jesus Christ in your life. And I'm seeing the end of the world happening. So I was about 35 at that time, and I still didn't do anything with that dream. I continued, working and socialising, and I didn't really sort of change my lifestyle much. I've always known that God exists, and I knew that I was doing things that wouldn't have pleased God, but I just didn't care. I in my mind I was I'll get right with God at some point, but right now, I'm just doing what everybody else is doing. So I was convicted of my sin, but I just didn't care. So carried on doing what I was doing. That was age 35. Anyway, so let's fast forward to another 10 years. So at age 46, in God's providence, he had me move, and directly opposite my house was a small evangelical church. And I went into that church. Out of curiosity, because I went into that church, and as I walked into that church for the first time ever, and bear in mind, I've never seen a Bible, I've never picked a Bible up, I've never heard the gospel of Jesus Christ. I didn't even know what gospel meant. I thought gospel was black people singing, so, I didn't know anything. Anyway, so that was 2016, and I experienced in that church something that I've never ever experienced before anywhere. I felt something beautiful and pure in that church. So I was welcomed. I was welcomed by those people in that church, and I saw something in those eyes. I saw something in their eyes as well. Two people in particular, I saw something in their eyes I've never seen before ever. And what I was seeing was the manifest peace and love of Christ emanating from their eyes. I'd never seen it in a mosque. I'd never seen it in any other Muslim person's eyes. And I'm seeing it here in church, in Southern Cross Evangelical Church in Portslade, East Sussex, the UK. Anyway, I love being there. And so they would obviously preach from the Bible, and preaching about Christ and who Christ is. But obviously my years of brainwashing that, Jesus is just a prophet. This is what the Muslims believe. Jesus is just a prophet. And yet the pastor is telling me that Christ is, the Son of God. He is, came from above, and I didn't want to believe it. I'd sing the songs, I'd sing the hymns, and I'd listen to the sermons, but in my heart I still had a hesitation. I enjoy being in church, but I won't believe what they're saying about this Jesus, coming from heaven, being the Son of God. I just won't believe that. I just believe that he was a very great guy. Anyway, one time we were singing a particular hymn, and that hymn is "How Great Thou Art." And when I sang that hymn, there was a line in that song about Christ, coming back and taking us home, and that one line, it really spoke to my heart. It convicted me, and I was it just made me cry. It made me cry. That one line really hit me in the heart, and I was convicted just like that. No one had to tell me that this was the truth. I knew it was the truth. Same time, at that time as well, during that period when that hymn came on, I was actually having one-to-one Bible study with my pastor, and on one occasion I told him what had happened in Saudi Arabia when I went on the pilgrimage about the I am Alpha, I am Omega. And my pastor took me to the book of Revelation, where Christ says in scripture, I am Alpha, I am Omega. And I said, that's exactly what that's what I heard. These are the exact words I heard. And my pastor said, these are the words of Christ. So not only did I hear directly in my mind, in my head, from Christ when I was in Mecca, that he is Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, but then I'm supernaturally convicted at that same time in church that he is who they say he is. He is who he says he is. And so I opened up my heart at that time, and the only thing that I can say is I fell in love with Christ, and I couldn't get enough of Christ. And I realised that what had happened to me was, was really, really special. You get Christ speaking to you in Mecca. You get God telling you in a dream, don't die without Jesus Christ in your life. You come into church with a cold heart, not wanting to believe that Christ is who they say he is, and yet just through that one lyric in that song, you're convicted. The Holy Spirit convicts you. And then you look back and you realise he was there the whole time. So I just went into a deep research mode, because what had happened to me was kind of like supernatural, and then I discovered that there were dozens and dozens and dozens of testimonies of people, Muslims from all over and non-Muslims, who'd had similar experiences, dreams and visions. And so I fell in love with Christ big time. And in 2017 I was baptised. And a week before my baptism, I had another dream. And in the dream, I saw in the sky, I saw this enormous, flaming blue cross. I saw an enormous, it was the whole sky was covered by this massive cross, and it was like flaming blue. And that, like how radiation from the sun, you feel the heat, don't you? Well, this cross in my dream, it was radiating, and I felt, instead of heat and light, I felt love hitting me and peace engulfing me. And this was just a few days before my baptism. And again, so that showed me that I'm, this is real. This is I'm doing this. So I was baptised in April 2017, and I absolutely wholeheartedly fell into church life. I became a church member. I was going to church on a Sunday morning service, evening service. I would go to church every Tuesday for prayer meeting, and then every fourth week I would have one-to-one Bible study with my pastor. So it was just such a wonderful experience getting into the Word of God. And I discovered also that so many professing Christians have never read the Bible from cover to cover. So I committed that I was going to be one Christian who can say, yes, I've read the Bible from cover to cover. So I've read from Genesis, and I'm currently at Jeremiah. I haven't even touched the New Testament yet, but I know it's going to be incredible when I get there. Anyway, so in April 2019, just through a whole set of circumstances, I had to leave my home in Brighton and move to Leeds. So I moved to Leeds, and I left my church behind and my old life behind as well. And I found a little church in Leeds, and I said to them that I love praying. I'm a bit of a prayer warrior, and I got invited to a prayer meeting for revival, and it was going to be a 2-hour prayer meeting. So this was April 2019, and I went to this prayer meeting, and I was like, I had my eyes closed. The pastor was sat here. Pastor's wife was sat next to me, and I prayed out loud, giving thanks for bringing me from where I was out of darkness into faith. So I prayed out loud, and I kind of gave thanks for that. And then somebody else prayed, and then somebody else prayed, and then somebody else prayed, and they prayed for me. They prayed out loud for me. And what they said was, our sister Tabby, Lord, always be with her, guide her, protect us. That kind of prayer it was. And what I want to tell you is, as that person was praying out loud for me, and I had my eyes closed, I had a vision of the Lord standing right in front of me. And this vision didn't last any more than 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just 5 seconds. So I had my eyes closed. And in my mind's eye, all of a sudden, the Lord is stood in front of me with his back towards me. And in that moment, time stood still, and this person is praying, saying, Lord, be with her, protect her, always guide her. And all of a sudden, I'm seeing in my mind's eye, even though I've got my eyes closed, the Lord is stood in front of me. And so again, crying, snot down here. My pastor knew something was happening, and pastor's wife gave me a tissue, so I wiped my nose. But in those 5 seconds, it was like 5 earthly seconds, but in those 5 earthly seconds, time stood still, and just through telepathy, the Lord impressed upon me in those 5 seconds that I belong to him, and that I'm to follow him, and that he will always protect me. And so he's saying this to me, imparting it into my mind, just like how I heard back in Saudi Arabia, I am Alpha, I am Omega, I'm the beginning and I am the end. Just exactly the same way, but this time he was in front of me, but with his back towards me. And whilst he's kind of imparting to me that, he's always leading me, and that I will always follow him, and that I belong to him, I'm thinking to myself, I look at his robes, and people say that his robes are always brilliant white. When I saw him, his robes were like a champagne cream colour, luxurious cream, and the thought that went through my head was, how are those robes staying up? I can't see any stitching. I don't see any sort of like, that is what was going through my head. Wow, his robes are so beautiful. How So that was going through my head. I mean, I didn't see his face. He was looking away from me, and then he disappeared. But I did tell my pastor what had happened, and he said to me that he knew that the Lord was having a moment with me. Always seems to be having a moment with me. And then, so I don't know why me. I suppose it's because I've always wanted to know the truth, and he has given me a very specific assignment throughout my life, and I'm just obedient. I guess I'm just obedient. But what I will say is, so what is it now? It's now, we're in May 2021. So it would have been September, October, November. It would have been sometime last year. It would have been maybe, I don't want to get the dates wrong, but it would have been Q4 of 2020 in the house that I live in now on my own. And all this COVID stuff is happening, and the travel ban is happening, and I'm in a long distance relationship, and I'm wanting to get to visit my partner, and all this lockdown has happened, and I was in a bit of a bad way. And I'm getting a very strong sense from the Lord that He's saying to me that when you pray to me, I want you to prostrate on the floor. So in this house, that's how I pray. I lie on the floor, like, completely, and I submit myself, and I pray and I cry and I pray and I sing and whatever. So that's my position. Anyway, so I can't remember exactly when it was. So I moved into this house in September, so it must have been maybe October, November. It happened pretty soon after moving into this house, where I'd get the instruction to on my face pray. So I'm praying on my face, and again it happened again. I'm praying lying down, and in my mind's eye I see 2 feet, bare feet, right in front of me. I mean, there was no holes in the feet, so I'm not going to say that at all. But I just, I saw his bare feet, and just kind of almost like the robes, like, just slightly over the feet, and that for me was, he's here. He never left me. He's here. I mean, I can't, those were the supernatural experiences that I've had with the Lord. Completely changed my life, I can tell you that much. I left my parents, I left my family. I got disinherited. They put me back in the will, but I don't really care about all that stuff. But so this is my testimony of how, some regular girl from Brighton, it was a nominal Muslim at best, gets called to faith. If I were to sit and tell you all the wonderful things and miraculous things that have happened in my life, and how I know, how He showed me that He's been with me all my life, I'd be here for the next 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. And so this is my first time I've ever sitting in front of the phone and recording. So I knew that I needed to record my testimony. And I've kind of been putting it off because I'm not very good in front of the camera, so you can tell I've not done this before. But this is good because I've actually done this in one cut. So anyway, that's my testimony to faith, and I just hope that even one person listening to this will ask God, ask Him who He is. Reach out, cry out, and He will answer you. I'm going to stop now. It's 28 minutes. I've rambled on too long. Thank you very much for listening.